Friend revealed her affair with a married man, unknowingly admitting it's my husband, leaving me questioning our past and my next move. I was out at dinner with a group of friends, enjoying a night out in the city. Among us was my friend Mary, who is undeniably attractive and always seems to draw attention wherever she goes. Men kept approaching her all night, and I'll admit, we were all a little jealous. It's a common feeling when we're out with her. Mary isn't shy about her looks. She shows off her cleavage and, honestly, it's not just her clothes, her confidence draws people in whether she's all covered up or not. Let me add some context, because it's important. I met Mary after I'd already married my husband. We crossed paths through her sister, who I knew from college. What's wild is that, even though we live in a massive city, the world still manages to feel tiny sometimes. My husband also attended the same college I did, and we initially met through mutual friends there. So, isn't that shocking that he knows Mary as well? Over time, Mary and I have become kind of close. She's at my house for gatherings all the time and even runs into my husband at the gym since their workout schedules overlap. That night, drinks were flowing and everyone was a little buzzed. The attention Mary got was incessant, and eventually the conversation turned both because of the alcohol and the atmosphere to her breasts. Someone asked if she'd ever let anyone titty fuck her, and Mary, never one for modesty, answered. She told us how much she loves her body but how she'd only let one guy do that to her because she was really into him. With hardly any prompting, she started spilling details, wild, adventurous stories about sexual weekends and hotel rooms. Then she said something that made all of us freeze. This guy was married now, wanted nothing to do with her, but she would have married him in a heartbeat if he'd commit. Worse, she admitted she'd made moves on him since, but he hadn't given in, though sometimes she felt he was just about to take her to a hotel again and fuck her brains out. The room was spinning, but her words got through everything. I didn't realize at the time that she was talking about my husband. But one of the other girls, suddenly very quiet, kept glancing at me. Later, she pulled me aside and told me straight out that Mary was talking about my husband. I was furious and desperate for answers, but my friend begged me not to confront Mary directly or betray her trust. Instead, I convinced her to call Mary on speaker and nonchalantly ask why she'd been talking about wanting to sleep with my husband, especially with me right there. Mary laughed it off, blaming it on the alcohol. The next day, the anger hadn't subsided, and I needed answers. I asked my husband about his path with Mary. He admitted to a short fling that didn't last, described it as brief, over in a few weeks. But Mary had talked as if it was a passionate affair that went on for over 2 years. He told me he didn't know I was friends with Mary's sister until just before our wedding, when I introduced them at our pre-wedding dinner. I didn't actually meet Mary myself until around that same time. I pressed him further, asking if Mary had ever made advances or flirted with him, but he flat out denied it. According to him, she's always kept a respectful distance. But I can't get Mary's words out of my head. She told us that she's flirted, practically thrown herself at him, confident that it's only a matter of time before he caves. I didn't know she was talking about my husband at that point, so I hadn't pushed for more details, but now the disconnect is driving me mad. Now, 2 of my friends know what happened, and they're brushing it off, telling me it was just drunken nonsense and that Mary was exaggerating. They insist I should just trust my husband and let it go. But how can I, when Mary is often in my home and sees my husband regularly at the gym? Should I ask him to switch gyms, draw a boundary, do something? Why do their stories about the same time period sound like totally different relationships? It's making me crazy. The idea of sitting Mary down and confronting her about everything keeps circling my mind, but I don't know if that will help or just make everything worse. Burger? Same place. Bagel? Same. Even salads. I understand consistency with things like haircuts, but he just won't change unless I literally force him to. The issue is, if women work the counter at these places, they always seem to think he's coming by to see them. It doesn't help that he's had girls slip him their email or number even with a wedding band on. One day, I walked into a coffee shop with him, and the barista greeted him with a "Hi honey boo," then complained that he hadn't been in for 3 weeks. He's not a model, but we live in a city swarming with modeling agencies, and people genuinely think he looks better than the professionals. He has the prettiest eyes, he's fit though clueless about his hair, making him look like a nerd most of the time. It somehow works both for his career and for me. But he's too nice for his own good, and women misinterpret that constantly. I'm half seriously working on making him a little less nice, without turning him into a total jerk. Now to the real issue. I confronted him about the timeline with him and Mary, and he finally admitted it lasted 4 months, probably over a year, but swears it all blurred by quickly and says he never really thinks about it. He still doesn't see his time with her as emotionally significant. Apparently, He runs into her at the gym all the time but insists he doesn't talk to her. Sometimes she comes up to him, points out that some slut is checking him out, and calls every woman who looks his way a slut. I asked him if he'd be willing to switch gyms and, for a second, saw something uneasy cross his face. He said he would if I really wanted him to, but I know he doesn't want to. I'm terrified my jealousy might eventually push him too far. Then, I confronted Mary. She apologized, admitted she still has feelings for him, and asked that we not be friends. She wants to keep herself far away from us, saying she'll never get over him as long as we're in her lives. She actually managed to get a transfer to the East Coast, which means she'll be gone for 3 years. She won't leave until late January 2016, but the conversation was surprisingly respectful. Still, there's one problem. I stupidly asked her for some details which I immediately regretted. She asked if I was sure. I told her I was. She revealed that she met my husband because he was actually involved with one of her friends, a stripper at a TRS chic club that's pretty famous locally. This friend brought Mary along for threesomes with my husband, and these meetings became a regular thing until Mary caught feelings and ended up stealing him away from the stripper. The details about the sex were far worse than anything I had ever imagined, and I could tell Mary was almost enjoying sharing them, knowing she had power over me in that moment. I felt like a willing hostage, unable to walk away, and she took full advantage of it while still claiming to be honest. It made me feel hollow, like maybe our amazing sex life was only amazing for me, and that he had just been humoring me at it all along. Of course, I confronted my husband again, demanded the truth about all the sex stuff. He confirmed everything. I was frustrated and asked why he never told me any of this, why he left out his history with Mary. He said he was afraid, that he thought I wouldn't take it well. He also insisted he'd immediately tell me if Mary ever acted inappropriately, but honestly, I'm not sure he even knows what inappropriate is. I asked why he'd never revealed he was into all these things, and confessed that now I just feel boring in bed for him. He swore sex with me is great. He explained that what he did with Mary and the stripper was never something he deliberately went after, it just happened, which is not exactly comforting but was all he could offer. My other friends have no idea about any of this. Only 2 friends know, the one who gave me the heads up, and Mary's sister. Mary's sister takes my side now, even though she's close with Mary, because she's married too. So, here I am tangled up in jealousy, insecurity, shock, and a sneaking fear that maybe I was always playing catch up with someone else's wild story. Update 2. Few days after that conversation with Mary, I went to the gym with my husband. I told myself it was just to try a new class, but really, I wanted to see them in the same room. The place always smells like rubber mats and eucalyptus, and the speakers are loud enough that you can feel the bass through your water bottle. He went straight to the squat rack like he always does, methodical, headphones in, that nerdy hair falling in his eyes, and I drifted around pretending to stretch. Mary was there. High ponytail, white headphones looped around her neck, one of those tiny rib tops that somehow counts as a shirt, and she clocked us the second we walked in. She smiled at me like we were acquaintances and like none of this had happened, like there wasn't a wrecking ball swinging through my stomach whenever I see her. I told myself to be chill. I even smiled back. She didn't approach right away. It was worse than that she lingered. I look over and catch her gaze skipping over me to him like I was a coat rack he'd left his jacket on. When she finally walked over, it was not to say hi to me. She stopped at his rack, held out his wrist between 2 fingers like she was inspecting a watch, and said something about how he should try chalk again, the bar slick on humid days. Like she was giving him training notes. He pulled his headphones down and nodded, polite, disengaged, the same way he says thank you to baristas or flight attendants. Then she glanced at me and, with that flat sweetness, told me she loved my leggings. Before I could even say thanks, she tilted her head at a woman doing hip thrusts and rolled her eyes, whispering, "Sluts, right?" and laughed. He didn't laugh. He set the bar down, stepped between us without touching either of us just a few inches closer to me and told her he was in a set. That was it. She walked away, but not before brushing her hand along the plate like it was an inside joke. I held it together through an upper body circuit, but I was furious and not at him for once. On our way to the parking garage, she came jogging after us. "Wait," she said, like she'd forgotten to give us a casserole. She held out a tiny zip pouch, one of those hotel keycard wallets, the W stamped in silver. "This was in my glove box. Yours. Thought you'd want it. Clearing out before I go." The date stamped on the inside was ancient, but I still felt like I had swallowed a live wire. He took it without looking at her and said, "Thanks." He didn't explain. I didn't ask there. The whole way home my hand shook on the steering wheel like I'd been caught stealing. At home, He told me he hadn't seen a thing in years, that it must have gotten wedged behind her seat back when things were. Whatever they were. He looked miserable, and I believed him, which felt like treason against the part of me that wants to blow everything up. He sat on the edge of the bed and told me he'd texted her after I confronted him and told her not to engage at the gym, not to talk to him like that, and that bringing the hotel wallet to the gym was a choice. I said it was a choice meant for me, not him. He didn't argue. Then something weird happened. I got a DM on Instagram from a woman whose username looked like a brand of mascara. Her first message was just, "Hi, this is going to sound insane, but I think we have something in common. Do you have time for coffee?" I ignored it until she sent a selfie. I recognized her from a million late nights in that club everyone in our city pretends they don't go to. She looked normal in daylight. No lashes, a messy bun, a sweater that had pills from the dryer. I met her at 2 in the afternoon at a cafe with terrible acoustics. She told me her real name, not the one she danced under, and said she had no interest in blowing up anyone's life but that Mary had DM'd her the same night as our dinner, trying to rope her into a fun surprise for my husband before her transfer. I stared at her, stupid. She pulled out her phone and showed me. "Mary, do you still have husband's name number? He's miserable. He misses us and won't admit it. I want to give him a going away present. If you text him he'll say has. Me, he's married. Mary, his wife is uptight. She'll deal. Consider it a mercy mission. If he thinks it's your idea, he'll say yes." A parade of eye roll emojis from the dancer, then, "Not my circus, not my monkeys." The dancer didn't owe me anything. She didn't know me, and she could have easily screenshotted for drama or posted it somewhere, but she didn't. She said she reached out because she ran into my husband once, at a sandwich shop near the club, right after we got engaged. He'd told her, awkwardly, that he was done with everything and that he hoped she was safe. She remembered because nobody ever says that in that neighborhood. Then she said the thing I think I needed to hear more than anything. I liked him. He wasn't cruel. He was 20-something and stupid and flattered. Mary took it personally when people moved on. That's her sport. It didn't make him a saint, it just pushed a little air back into the room. I showed my husband those screenshots that night. I expected him to get defensive and offer me that little half-truth survival kit he's been handing out. Instead, he sat down on the floor and asked me to read them out loud because he said when I read things in my voice, it makes him tell the truth. So I did. He closed his eyes like he had a migraine. Then he got up, went into the kitchen, and came back with his phone. He handed it to me and told me to scroll. There was a thread with Mary from months back. It was boring and transactional at first, gym schedule overlaps, random comments about a mutual friend's wedding. Then, a hard swerve into something that made my throat close. "Mary, I'm staying at the Line tonight. Room, 1407. Come up after your workout. No pressure." He'd responded, "Stop. This isn't funny. Don't talk to me like this." And then a block. I don't know why he unblocked her later or how she kept worming back through. He said he thought being civil was kinder because she was friends with me now and he didn't want to create drama for me. I told him his version of kind feels like leaving a door unlocked in a bad neighborhood and then being surprised when someone tries the handle. We had sex that night, and I hate that I'm going to write about this because it feels tacky, but it's part of what changed. I was the one who started it, and I tried to be who I thought he used to want: louder, rougher, reckless. He stopped me, not because he didn't want me, but because he could feel the acting. He put his hand on the headboard next to my face and said he loved sex with me because I'm with him, not posing for a third person in the room. He told me he didn't bring up the stripper and Mary because he was ashamed of how easy he'd been, that it makes him feel like a him he doesn't like to remember. He said he doesn't talk about that time in his life the way Mary does because it doesn't make him feel powerful. He cried a little. It wasn't a bait movie cry, more like the pressure relief hiss when you open a soda. It was new. It made me a different kind of angry, the sort that quietly unhooks your jaw. The next morning he emailed the gym, canceled his membership, and signed up at the dingy place down the street with broken fans and no eucalyptus towels. He sent Mary a message short, almost bureaucratic, with me CC'd. "Please don't approach me at the gym again. Don't contact me. Any logistics can go through my name. I'm not interested in rehashing the past or creating any situation that disrespects my wife." She responded 10 minutes later from a different address, just one line. "You can pretend I was nothing but you can't erase me." Then she followed it with a screenshot from years ago of some blurry hotel room mirror selfie, cropped so you couldn't see anything but a wrist and a neck and the corner of a smile. It could have been anybody. It still took me an hour to stop shaking. Mary's sister called me from her car, whispering like she was in a closet. She'd heard about the gym email because Mary called her sobbing. She asked if we could meet because there were things I needed to know before Mary left. I expected more sex trivia. Instead, she brought me a shoebox with a cracked lid and said she didn't know what else to do with it. Inside were stupid things: ticket stubs, a napkin from the burger place my husband loves, a valet claim ticket with his initials, a scrap of a grocery list in his handwriting. I recognized the handwriting and something about my husband on a blue post-it that said coffee, bananas, protein bars broke me in a way the hotel nonsense didn't. She told me Mary collects things like that she keeps boxes for people she can't let go of and reopens them when she's bored or lonely. She said she'd told Mary to throw it out before she moved because keeping it was making her mean. She said Mary refused. So she handed it to me and told me it was mine to decide. I didn't tell my husband about the box right away. I wanted to know what it felt like to hold a small museum of someone's obsession. I sat on the floor and looked at a piece of my husband's past I could actually touch, not imagine, and I felt less crazy. Then I put the whole thing in the trash and walked it out to the curb and popped the lid back on like I just trapped something with teeth. Mary texted me once more. It read exactly, "I'm leaving earlier than planned. Don't worry, you win." It didn't feel like winning. It felt like standing in a room after a party where everyone's gone and you can finally hear the hum of the refrigerator. My husband came up behind me while I was staring at it and put his chin on top of my head like he does when he wants to be a golden retriever. He asked me what I wanted to do with everything. I told him I wanted to lie to myself and say I didn't care anymore. He said we could practice telling the truth instead, even if it's ugly, and promised me there were no more hotel key wallets in anyone's glove box. We went for a bagel, to the exact same place he always goes, because of course we did, and the girl behind the counter called him stranger and asked where he'd been. He left, and then caught my face and said, quietly, "I'm here." It was ordinary and it was not enough, and it was also more than I had in weeks. I'm not cured. But it's something that feels like choosing. Update 3. We had a quiet week, the kind that felt like someone had put a duvet over the city. He went to the dingy gym where the fans are broken and the floor smells faintly like pennies and old rubber. I answered emails and tried not to cross-check every pretty woman on the sidewalk against my imagination. We were doing the boring things on purpose: bagels, the same coffee place, the stupid, steady map of his habits suddenly feeling like a relief instead of a provocation. I kept my phone face down like it could bite. On a Thursday night he was in the shower and his phone started vibrating against the bathroom sink like a trapped bee. I glanced at the screen because I'm a person with eyes. Unknown number. It rang 3 times, then a FaceTime ping flashed a long black bar of a username, something that looked like a shipping company and a string of numbers. It was the kind of handle you use when you don't want to be recognized. I called his name through the steam. He turned off the water and came out with shampoo in his hair, blinking. The phone pinged again. "Miss your hands. Can we talk?" He didn't take the towel from me. He just leaned over, hit the side button so the call died, and handed me the phone like I was the only adult in the room. "Who is that?" I said. It came out flat, which surprised me. "No hysteria, just a new species of tired." "No idea," he said. "Do you want to answer it together?" I typed, "Who is this?" The reply was instant, like whoever it was had been perched waiting. The dancer's stage name came through in 3 bubble-popped letters that made my stomach drop even though I already knew I didn't know anything. I DM'd her from my phone because now I have her in my contacts next to my dentist, and that feels like a sentence I'd never expected to write. She wrote back in a minute. "Not me. Someone's playing." "So it's Mary," I said, "because who else?" He sat down on the hamper with shampoo sliding toward his eyebrows and nodded, miserable and weirdly calm. "Then let's make this the last time. We didn't do anything elegant. We told a dancer. We told Mary's sister. The dancer said she'd come if we wanted another pair of eyes, that she's good at spotting a scam before it turns into a story. Mary's sister said she would sit separately and keep her phone recording, not like a YouTube sting but so I had proof if things turned sideways. I love that everyone in my orbit has contingency plans now. The number suggested meeting at the bar at the line, because of course it did, because all our ghosts are lazy and prefer the same rooms. He wrote back, "Lobby. Public. 15 minutes. No room. No exceptions." I watched him type it and hit send, and the satisfaction of being witness to his spying was louder than my anger for a second. I wore my least interesting clothes on purpose. Black jeans, a sweater you could ball up and use as a pillow. We sat in separate corners of the lobby like a surveillance photo, him with water in a thick-bottomed glass, me with a club soda that tasted like melted ice cube tray. The air smelled like luggage wheels and too much perfume. The dancer took a chair by the plants and looked like a grad student. Mary's sister texted that she was near the elevators and not to look at her because she didn't want Mary knowing she betrayed her in this particular way. 5 minutes late, then 10, and I started to think maybe I'd invented the last 6 months. Then the elevator pinged and there she was, with that deliberate, loose-hipped walk people write songs about and a baseball cap tugged low like she was some kind of celebrity avoiding paparazzi. It would've been funny if it didn't make my mouth go dry. She didn't look at me. She went straight to him and smiled like a coin. "You always were a rule follower," she said, which told me she'd read the public-only text and taken it like a dare. "I'm leaving tomorrow. I thought you might want to say goodbye like adults, not over email." He didn't stand up. "Goodbye," he said. His voice was polite in the way that lands like a slammed door. She flicked her eyes at me finally, then did a quick, dismissive scan of the plants and the carpet and the way the bartender was drying glasses and probably us. "You two always need an audience," she said. "It's very on brand." My hands were steady on my glass, which felt like a weird personal victory. "Then put on a better show," I said. "It came out easier than I expected. This thing where you pretend he's unfinished business. It's boring." Her mouth moved like she was about to laugh and decided not to. "You can't pretend this is just about sex," she said, pitching her voice low like it could slip under the table and waned its way up my spine. "But it's about you hating not being picked," the dancer said from the plant chair, conversationally, like we were discussing a brunch reservation. "He's not your only box." Mary hadn't seen her. She flinched like someone had tapped the back of her knee with a hammer and then, for the first time since the dinner that started this, looked actually startled. Her eyes cut to the elevators and then to Mary's sister's hands, which were folded too neatly to be casual, and something in her just misfired. "You're all insane," she said. It was almost convincing except for the way she was breathing, too shallow for someone as athletic as she is. He stood up. "Don't contact me again," he said. "Not through people we both know. Not pretending to be someone I used to know. Not with pictures that are supposed to upset my wife. Not at the gym. Not at all. This is the last time I'm going to say this in person. You can pretend I was nothing but," she started, recycling the line from her email like it was cut and paste. "You were something I did and decided not to be," he said, and I watched it land, a clean, square hit that wasn't cruel. It just didn't leave any room. She looked at me again like she was calculating whether it'd be worth it to take one more swing. I don't know what my face did, but I think I finally looked like somebody who had stopped performing terrified. She tugged her cap lower, not because of cameras, and walked out without turning around. The elevator closed on her like a mouth. We sat there for a minute like three people who'd just been told a test was cancelled. The dancer reached over, plucked the lemon twist out of my club soda, and said, "Half of this game is making you believe you have to keep playing." Then she squeezed my shoulder once, businesslike, and left in the direction of people who do normal Thursday afternoon things. I thought it had been hard enough, that we'd done the adult, public goodbye and that meant the next part would be gray and dull and full of laundry. The next morning his company's HR sent him a calendar invite for an informal check-in. Subject line, "Respect in the workplace." If you've ever had your heart fall through your stomach and into the building's foundation, you know the sensation. He called me on his way and said, "I didn't do anything," in the way you say it when you're 31 and you still remember getting called to the principal's office for borrowing a pencil without asking. I believed him in a way I didn't a month ago. Belief sits weird in your throat when it's new. It tastes like metal. The meeting wasn't a drama. It was a small room with a ficus that looked like it resented living indoors and a bowl of mints that tasted like dust. There had been an anonymous tip that he makes women uncomfortable at the gym, that he stares, that he has a reputation. The HR woman was doing her job exactly the way she was supposed to, she read from a script. He told the truth. He brought his phone, which I had scrolled until my thumb cramped. He offered to let them read it. He explained the gym switch, the email CCing me, the request not to be contacted. He said, clearly, that a former acquaintance had escalated things when he didn't reciprocate and that he wanted to make sure it didn't bleed into work. He didn't throw Mary's full government name across the table even though part of me wanted him to staple it to a memo. He just sat squarely in the mess he'd helped make and didn't flail. They thanked him for the contest. They said the words, "We don't investigate employees' private lives." He came home with 2 grocery store bouquets because he didn't know what kind of flowers you buy for not being fired. I put them in water and then stood at the sink and cried with my hands braced on the edge until my shoulders hurt. He put his chin on my head again in that dog way and said my name like he was trying to talk me back to earth. Mary's sister sent a picture that afternoon of a boarding pass with midnight numbers and LaGuardia on it. "She's going," she texted. I don't know how long she means it for, but she's on the plane at least. I don't know if we want anything. I do know that the apartment felt weirdly bigger that night, like our furniture had shifted 2 inches apart and I could walk around it without catching my hip on the corners. We ate takeout in bed and turned on a show and didn't watch it, which felt domestic and wrong at the same time. 2 days later he cleared out an old Gmail folder he never uses anymore and found a calendar notification he hadn't seen in years, set to repeat annually with a name he'd never give anything now. The line item just said 1407. The date was coming up. He brought his laptop to me like it had caught fire. Delete it, I said. He hovered for a second like his finger had a conscience. Then he hit the trash can and it was gone, with a stupid little animation Google uses like your past is confetti. We started doing this thing my therapist once told me about, where instead of saying I don't care because it sounds cool and tired and above everything, you say I care a lot and it scares me and then sit in the silence that follows like it won't kill you. We dated at the bagel place with poppy seeds stuck in his front tooth and a girl behind the counter calling him stranger again, and this time he said, yeah, I've been somewhere else, and looked at me when he said somewhere. We dated at night in the half dark, when it's easy to lie because you can't see the other person's face as clearly. We did it once on the sidewalk when a woman in a red coat looked over her shoulder too long and I felt the heat rush to my cheeks and he said out loud, "You're about to get mad," and I said, "I'm already there," and we both laughed, which loosened something sharp inside me. Mary texted one more time, from a number with a Rhode Island area code. It said, "You made him small." I watched the dots blink like a heart monitor and didn't reply. He saw it ping on my phone and sat down next to me and said, "I feel the opposite. I feel like I can't breathe." He didn't ask me to block it. I did without telling him. I blocked the Phantom, to the one with a shipping company username. I archived the screenshots with the rest of the junk in my phone, sandwiched between a recipe for sheet pan chicken and a video of my niece on a swing. It didn't end with a bang. There wasn't an airport chase or a door slamming that rattled the picture frames. She went east. We stayed. I'm writing this from our couch with a throw blanket that sheds little blue fibers all over my leggings and his feet are in my lap while he does something on his laptop that looks like work. He stopped going to his barista girlfriend's coffee shop not because I asked, but because he said it was kinder to himself to take away the static. He put in for a week off in March and asked me where I wanted to go where everything is ugly and new and untouched by any of our ghosts. I told him I wanted to sit in our own city and make new places out of old ones, and he said that sounded like work and a miracle and he was in. The fridge hums louder at night now that I've noticed it. When the apartment is quiet and my brain starts to spool out the loaded movie of things I don't need to know, I get up and drink water straight from the glass like a human being. Sometimes he wakes up and reaches for me without trying to fix anything. We are not done being haunted. We are also not letting someone else narrate our house to us. It's small, and it's not spectacular, and it's ours in a way that feels deliberate. There have been no more hotel wallets. There are only the same bagels he always gets, and the new gym with its busted fans, and Tuesdays where nothing happens. He puts his hand on the headboard next to my face when we have sex and I don't hear anybody else breathing in the room. It is ordinary and it feels like the bravest thing either of us has done. We are choosing, and then choosing again. Update 4. The server buzzed our apartment at 10 in the morning like a wrong note on a flute. I was in sweatpants and one sock because the other one had disappeared under the couch like it had a secret door. He answered the intercom and said, "Yeah?" in that nice boy voice he uses with delivery people and doormen and anyone with a name tag. "I have documents for his full name," the voice said. Neutral, clicked. Every molecule in my body got very still. The envelope was thicker than the sort you would get with coupons and thin enough to make my teeth hurt. We didn't open it right away. We stood in the kitchen with it on the counter between us, a new pet we didn't ask for. It was a civil harassment petition. Out of state. Her name at the top in all caps like it was announcing a show. Allegations that he'd created a hostile environment for her at the gym which, fine, he doesn't even go there anymore, that he'd stalked her at a hotel as if meet me in the lobby were not words she'd typed with her own fingers, that he'd enlisted third parties to intimidate her hello to the dancer minding her own damn business. She'd attached a blurry photo of his profile at a squat rack like the most boring paparazzi shot in America and a screenshot of his email saying don't contact me with my name CC'd, circled in res if CCing your wife is itself an act of violence. The hearing would be remote. The date was in 2 weeks. My hands went numb from the inside out. He sat down on the floor and put his head on my knees like he'd sprained something in the part of him that's supposed to keep people out. I called the dancer because I didn't know who else to call who could stand on this particular bridge without swaying. She answered on the second ring and said, without hello, "Tell me you're not at the line again." When I told her, She went very quiet, the way a room goes quiet when a refrigerator turns off and you realize you've been shouting over it for years. Okay, she said, brusque in that way that means a person has decided to be useful. I have a friend. She does restraining orders for women trying to get away from terrible men, which is not this, but she knows the forms and the judges and which words make people's eyes glaze in a way that helps you. I'll text you her number. You'll owe me coffee that tastes like penis. She did, and the friend picked up, and I was suddenly talking to a woman in a cardigan who said things like, breathe, and didn't sound like she was reading from a script. Mary's sister sent me 13 texts in a row without punctuation and then a voice note from somewhere that sounded like a parking garage. I told her not to do this, she said, whispering like we were in church and she was confessing to knocking over a candle. She said it's about closure, which is code for attention. I'll write a statement. I'll say she asked me to call you and I refused. I can say she kept the box. I told her to breathe too. It felt like handing out paper bags on a crashing plane. We spent that Saturday in a pile on our living room floor with 2 laptops, a bowl of pretzels nobody ate, and an accumulation of tiny, stupid proofs of our lives. Screenshots. Dates. The email where he CC'd me. The DM from the dancer where Mary tried to recruit her. The text to the gym canceling, the reply from the manager with a sad face or the corporate approved version of one. The HR calendar invite. I watched him build a timeline and it was the least romantic collage in the world and I loved him specifically for how boring and thorough he was. At one point he stopped, thumb still in the air over his trackpad, and said, I feel like I have to prove I'm not a ghost. I reached over and put my palm on his throat for a second to feel the warmth and the swallow, a stupid mammal ritual. You're here, I said. He nodded like he believed me for a second longer than usual. The hearing was on a Tuesday at 11, which is apparently when the universe schedules all humiliations. We logged into a link that looked like a spam site you'd never click on with an older laptop and our attorney friend's name in the corner of the screen. I could see our faces like washed grapes in a tiny rectangle. The judge had a plant that had given up living as a plant and reinvented itself as a green sculpture. Mary's face popped up, a hotel lamp glow behind her, hair scraped into a knot that said I'm taking this seriously, makeup that said the same. She didn't look like the gym anymore. She looked like a brochure for a reasonable. She spoke first. Her voice did that thing where it shakes like a tiny bird in a hand but the sentences come out sharp. He showed up, he stared, he blocked and unblocked, he CC'd his wife to intimidate me, he brought people to a hotel to gang up on me, he has a reputation. There was a moment where she looked directly into the camera and said my first name like it was a word that had to be sterilized before it could be put in her mouth. She hates me, she said softly, so he hates me now, too. A tiny corner of my brain admired the elegance of the flip. Our lawyer was not elegant. She was plain and bulldozer careful. She walked the judge through the timeline with the precision of someone who has filled out a lot of forms that determine whether someone gets their kids this weekend. He has asked not to be contacted. He switched gyms. He emailed her not to approach him. He CC'd his wife because he is married, and transparency is not a weapon in and of itself. She asked if she could share her screen. She put up the DM where Mary had tried to book a going away threesome like it was a dentist appointment. Then, to my surprise, she put up a brief letter on a different letterhead entirely, the HR woman's polite paragraph confirming there was a complaint, that he'd given context, that they never investigated people's private lives, that they considered the matter closed. It wasn't a medal. It was a piece of paper that didn't light on fire when you looked at it. Mary went very still. That's private, she said, into the kind of silence where you can't hear a person realize they miscalculated. The judge adjusted his glasses. This is not a criminal proceeding, he said in the tone of a man who has said it twice already today. We are here because MS. Her last name is asking for protection. I don't see a basis for a no-contact order limited to one party. What I will say is this, neither party should contact the other, directly or through third parties, for any reason. If you see each other in public, you go the other way. Don't test me on this. It wasn't a victory parade. It was a traffic cone. Functional and bright and unglamorous. She looked at the camera like maybe if she could see herself she would be framed differently. So he can pretend, she said, miserably theatrical. So he can walk around pretending I never. The judge muted her. It felt better than it should have. We closed the laptop and both sat very straight, like our spines had suddenly remembered their jobs. He'd exhaled for about a minute. I didn't get what I deserve, he said, surprising me enough that I laughed. What did you think you deserved? I asked. To be set on fire on YouTube, he said, wry, and I fell a little more in love with a part of him. That can make stupid jokes at the bottom of a well. The lawyer told us to lock things down anyway because the boring work is the only work that lasts. We changed our numbers that afternoon at a phone place that smelled like Windex and cardboard. The guy behind the counter had a dragon tattoo that wrapped his forearm like an inside joke and took our old sames out like he was pulling baby teeth. He said, "You'd be shocked how many of these I do because of exes," while chewing a peppermint that clicked against his teeth. We weren't shocked. We bought new cases we didn't need. We walked out into light that didn't match the weather. His mother called me that night. She does not call me. She texts like a person who thinks emojis are ransom notes and only phones when someone is dead or pregnant. "Are you okay?" she said without hello. My stomach did the kind of dive roller coasters charge extra for. "We're okay," I said cautiously, because the only other honest answer was a Yelp review nobody asked for. She took a breath that made static in a receiver. "I got a message on Facebook," she said, naming it like it was a disease. "From a young woman who said she was worried about my son. That his wife is isolating him and that he looks unwell." It was intrusive. She said intrusive like she was politely describing a raccoon in a kitchen. "I blocked it," she added, brisk. "But I thought you should know." I closed my eyes and saw a baseball cap pulled low in a kind of determination that doesn't care what's in the way. I told her, in 4 sentences, that someone from his past was acting out and that we were handling it with boring paperwork and new phone numbers and that she didn't need to worry unless we told her to. She sighed, deep enough to shake the line. "I can do that," she said. "I will not engage." I thanked her as if she'd offered a kidney and not just the heroic act of not pressing reply. 2 days later, a padded mailer showed up without a return address. It thunked against the bottom of our building mailbox like a small animal. I stood under the bad fluorescent in the lobby and slid it open with my key. Inside was a Ziploc and inside that was a napkin from the burger place he loves with the grease spots soaked into little continents. In the corner, his handwriting, ketchup, no pickles, extra napkins. The date was smudged and old. It was the kind of thing you only keep on purpose because it doesn't survive by accident. There wasn't a note. It felt like a dare and a tug and a relic shoved into my hands and at a museum with bad lighting. I took the whole thing upstairs and put it on the counter like it might detonate. He looked at it like you look at something you don't remember losing because you didn't ever think of it as keepable. "What do you want to do?" he asked. I thought about shrines. I thought about trash cans. I thought about ovens and matches and dramatic gestures that stain the ground. I put the napkin back in the bag, sealed it, and walked it down to the trash room and slid it into the big, stupid building bin people use for pizza boxes and broken lamps. It sank into the confetti of 100 normal lives. I stood there long enough to memorize its vanishing. I didn't cry. I felt exactly nothing and then exactly everything and then the quiet that isn't peace so much as the absence of a noise you get used to carrying. We started therapy on Mondays at 8, which is either the worst or the most responsible time to drag your hearts to a stranger's couch. The office has a rug that's trying very hard and a small fountain that sounds like it's apologizing for existing. Our therapist has kind eyes and a jawline that says she has seen worse. She asked us in the first session what we wanted, which is the kind of question that makes you sound very dumb if you answer it too fast. He said, "I want to stop letting my past text me," and I said, "I want my body to stop acting like the room is on fire whenever a woman with great hair walks by." She said, "Okay," like those were ordinary requests, and drew a tiny circle on a level pad and labeled it now, and I could have kissed her for how aggressively unsexy that was. We went to his coworker's birthday that Friday because you cannot build a life out of bagels and court dates, and I watched women smile at him and him smile back with this new clarity that lives right behind his eyes where kindness used to get confused with availability. He introduced me 3 separate times as my wife, not like property, like context, like an anchor. A woman in a red dress asked him about the broken fan Jim and he said, "It's great, it smells like penance, nobody bothers me," and then he turned to me and said, "Tell her about the eucalyptus towels we don't miss," and it was nothing and it wasn't everything that tasted like water when you didn't realize you were thirsty. Mary texted one more thing to my old number that never went through because numbers can be doors you. Close and actually, blessedly, lock. I only know because Mary's sister screenshotted and sent it to me with an apology typed so fast the letter smeared. It read, "You think you're safe because I'm far. Distance is just a map detail." Her sister wrote under it, "She's tired. I'm getting her a therapist that isn't TikTok." I sent back a single heart because I don't know how to love people in pieces and I keep trying anyway. He has stopped putting his chin on my head like a golden retriever when I cry and started asking, "Do you want comfort or solutions?" Which is infuriatingly adult and works more often than I wanted to. We have sex with the light on sometimes because I decided being seen was less scary than performing. He still puts his hand on the headboard near my face like he's swearing an oath to be physically present, and I don't hear anyone else breathing. He wears his wedding ring to take out the trash, which he didn't use to. This morning he brought me a bagel with too much cream cheese because I like it that way, and the girl behind the counter didn't call him stranger or honey boo or anything at all because he goes somewhere else now where the muffins are dry and the barista is a man in his 50s who only wants to talk about baseball. The apartment hums. The fridge clicks on. My phone is quiet in a way that means you sometimes stare at it just to spite it. Mary is gone. Or she isn't. She exists in the same world I do, a collection of folders and habits and rooms with carpets, and now there's a tiny, formal no-contact cone standing between us like a bright orange object you can see even at night. I am not waiting for the next envelope like a weather report anymore. I don't believe in permanent solutions, but I do believe in smaller lives that you grow so precisely they fit you like a custom suit. We are building ours in the ugliest, truest ways I know. It is not dramatic. It feels, in a way that has become my favorite, like choosing and then choosing again.